Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna be reacting to some Terzu. I don't know if I reacted to him before on this channel. I'm not sure, I don't remember. But if not, this gonna be our first time reacting to him on the channel. Let's see what he talking about today. Like he talking about some anteaters already. Trying to see if they OP or not. Let's find out.
Ants are one of the most overpowered factions in the game. Their go-wide-use social strategy is essentially unbeatable, to the point where they control wide swaths of the overworld pretty much uncontested.
Yeah, they do.
Even the human build, the undisputed top tier in the current
He
meta,
just
has
blow
trouble
up
keeping
ants?
ants at bay. And with
Oh,
their huge
man.
variety of incredible abilities, from acidic projectiles and powerful stingers to coordinated attack strategies and terraforming abilities, I don't think it's
Projectiles?
much of a surprise
Didn't
that
know about
ants are
that.
such a meta-defining force. And yet, there's one build which can obliterate an entire
Do you got a
colony in
video
only
on
a
this?
few
I'm gonna check it
minutes.
out.
The Anteater.
If you do.
But does having a super favorable matchup against one of the game's top tier builds actually translate into the Anteater being top tier itself? There's so much more to the Anteater build than just being able to solo an entire colony of ants with ease. So in today's video, we'll discuss all the abilities and weaknesses of the Anteater build to determine
I like how he break it down to like video
Anteaters
game
are only
terms.
playable on the South America server, in both jungle and savanna biomes.
Okay.
And this is not an easy server to try to carve a niche into. I know I drone on a lot about how OP African builds are, but the Amazon rainforest is home to some of the most fearsome predators in the game, including the snake build with the largest size, and the felid build with the most powerful bite, among many other incredibly dangerous predators.
Yo.
Meanwhile, the anteater's
stop
closest
biting
living
me.
relative is the sloth, a build with so many devastating flaws that I currently rate it as the mammal furthest down on the tier
Dang,
list.
he got
So
him
how
an
is
F
it
tier.
that the anteater is able to survive such a hostile metagame? Well, they may be closely related to the pathetic moss-covered slugs that Human Faith builds named one of the 7 deadly sins after, but they're also related to this, Megatherium, the gigantic ground sloth
from
that is
Ark.
capable of one-shotting a saber-tooth.
Dang.
And in my opinion, anteaters take after this type of sloth. To see what I mean, let's look at their stats. There is some variation among different anteater builds, which we'll get into later in this video, but for now we're going to focus on the giant anteater. Pulling up the analysis, 2 things jump out right away. The first is their shockingly high HP stat.
health
While they don't
high
have any
and
major
power.
form of armor, the anteater can still shake off a surprising amount of damage,
Yo, he
even from
got
attacks
kicked
that
right
might
to the
normally
head.
one-shot most
He
players.
tanked that
This is
John.
crucial as it allows the anteater a chance to survive ambushes by jaguars, which is pretty incredible given that jaguars frequently one-shot crocodilians. But this is also extremely important because it provides an opportunity for the anteater's other surprisingly high stat to become relevant, that stat being their attack power. This attack power stat might look like a mistake, especially given that anteaters don't even have teeth and are
Whoa.
completely locked
That was
out of using the
crazy.
move bite. However, once you get past the head and look down, you realize that at the end of their massive gorilla arms,
Oh, they got
anteaters
claws.
have pickaxe-shaped claws as big as those of a
And
grizzly
that
bear,
joint like a
except
hood.
the anteater's claws are even sharper because they walk on their knuckles to avoid wearing them down.
Dang.
These incredible weapons are what allow the anteater to tear through the cement-like walls of termite mounds with ease. But they come with the nice side benefit of being able to absolutely
punching the
eviscerate any
jaguar?
player who fails to kill them in one hit. Their slashes can
Why he
easily
punching
deal
on that
lethal
jag
damage.
like that?
So any predator looking to ambush an anteater needs to make sure they have what it takes to finish the job before the anteater can counterattack. And this threat alone is often enough to dissuade attacks in the first place. While the anteater's matchup with the jaguar is of course important, it wouldn't be fair to the anteater player base if I didn't comment on their matchup versus you social insect
I didn't even know they
colonies.
were that big.
The anteater's 2-foot-long tongue is covered in a glue-like substance and can flick in and out over 150 times per minute, which can take out dozens of insects per flick and
Why they
decimate a
do this
colony in
slinging
no time.
around?
However, similar to their sloth brethren, anteaters opted for a slower metabolism. This comes with downsides, which we'll cover later, but it does mean that they don't need to consume an entire colony of ants, and can actually leave the colony in a damaged but recoverable state. This is a highly sustainable method of farming XP because it ensures that the Anteater player can simply return to the same termite mound or anthill later on, tear into it again, and the colony will have replenished its supply of workers enough that they can just do the same thing again. It also means the Anteater doesn't need to be at any one colony for very long, which is good because despite how powerful their offensive tools are at destroying a colony of insects, Anteaters don't actually have any unique defensive abilities to avoid the damage from the swarm of militant insects they've just provoked, and have to rely solely on their HP to soak up the damage. Of course, as mentioned prior, because of their high HP stat, Anteaters are well equipped to tank a lot of hits. But the acid attacks launched by termites and ants certainly aren't something they can just ignore for extended duration. The rest of the Anteater stats are
Am I crazy? But I ain't never heard of an acid attack from an ant. I hope he got a video on this, because I'm going to have to watch it, because I'm so lost right now when he keep talking about these acid attacks.
Fairly lackluster. Anteaters aren't as sluggish as sloths, but because of their slow metabolism, they do have a below average movement speed. Given that they've spec'd into massive claws on their forelimbs, rather than more mobility favoring options like paws or hooves, I don't think this low speed is too surprising. It's a worthy trade-off in my opinion. Their stealth stat is also middle of the road. They don't stick out as bad as some builds, but aren't the best camouflaged either. The Anteater can hide under its bushy tail, disguising itself as a bush while also shielding itself from the cold. But as far as plant-style disguises go, there are certainly more impressive displays out there. The Anteater's intelligence isn't great either. They'd form quite a formidable force in groups, yet rarely engage in team strategies, if ever. Their last main weakness is their poor eyesight. It's a good thing they don't go down in one hit, because the tiny eyes on the sides of their heads do not give them the best odds at detecting an ambush before the attacker is within striking range. Next, let's delve into some of the individual variants of the Anteater. The Giant Anteater is by far the most powerful, at the cost of its mobility. The Giant Anteater is the only variant that lacks the ability to climb trees. Despite their claws being phenomenal for hooking into trees, giant anteaters simply are too cumbersome to venture into the canopy. There are two other variants of the Anteater build, and both variants are much better at climbing. First is the Tamandua. This mid-sized anteater sports a slightly lower base power and hit point stat than the giant anteater, but in exchange it has unlocked a powerful new ability, a prehensile tail. This perk allows the user to use its tail essentially as a fifth appendage, granting it additional resistance to being knocked down while browsing high up in the treetops. Because of its lower HP stat, this build can't tank acid damage as well as the giant anteater, and so it needs to avoid high-tier ant builds like the leafcutter ant. The final variant is the Pygmy Anteater, a nocturnal build that invests more into its stealth than other stats, drastically cutting its bulk and damage in turn.
So it just got high stealth.
The Pygmy Anteater is a bit too similar to the sloth build for me to consider it competitively viable, but to each their own. Although the ability to climb does come in handy for escaping predators, the giant anteater doesn't seem to miss it much. While the other variants need to worry about attacks from eagles, the giant anteater's bulk is enough to protect it from most threats. Its matchup versus the
it's too funny. Yo, it's too funny, right? Now he go T-pose on him. Oh
Jaguar
man,
is still pretty risky, but it's better than most. So I'm gonna give the giant anteater a rating of A tier, while the Tamandua gets a rank of B tier. And the Pygmy Anteater gets a D tier rank.
Okay.
One of the most effective ways to lock in a high placement on the tier list is to have high base stats. And while most stats require millions of years of evolution to change, intelligence is one of the few stats which can be leveled up, provided you have the right sort of training. In today's meta, abilities like coding and mathematics are extremely useful. They're tough to learn, unless you got a really effective course designed to intuitively guide you through difficult concepts. That's precisely where today's sponsor, Brilliant, comes in.
Yo, that was the cleanest ad placement I've seen in my life, bro. And me saying that thinking he was talking about the Jones.
Visit my link, /Tierzu. Thanks again to Brilliant for sponsoring.
That was clean ad placement. Nah, that was it. I clicked on another video.
Here's one thing you need to do before you buy.
Man, but I ain't gonna lie though. First of all, I ain't know it was 3 types of anteaters. Had no clue about that one. And the T-posing, the funniest thing I ever seen in my life. The eagle came and slapped him. He just go tee up on him like, yo, stop playing me. But yeah, hopefully he do got that ant video on his channel, because I do want to check that out, because I was so lost when he was sitting there talking about spitting acid on him. Like, I was so confused right there. I'm gonna see if I can find it up here later though. But yeah, if y'all like the video, like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what y'all want to see next in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next one.